You're listening to Crossing Borders with ANYP for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANYPodcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eagle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Good afternoon, good morning for those who may be listening in the morning, and welcome back to Crossing Borders with myself, Connor Donald, and my co-host, Scott. We are coming to you just before the Eagles kick off against the Miami Dolphins in what we hope will finally be another victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. So hopefully we do have some great topics, but hopefully we can get done in the next 50 minutes so that I can go watch some Eagles football. Right. But for those of you who may never have tuned in to Crossing Borders, this is where we diplomatically debate and talk about some of the hottest topics in Philly sports or overall sports, whatever. If there's no Philly topics, we go to the broader sports world, and we do that by pitting Canada versus the United States. I'm the only Canadian blood on the Always Next Year podcast family, so I go up against basically anybody, because why not? Until we get more Canadian love, I have to be the one to defend the Canadian soil. So how are you doing today, Scott?
Good. I'm reporting live from the frozen tundra that is Southern California right now. We're having a weird cold spell. It's been like 40 degrees, which has had people in a panic. So it's been kind of funny to see that. But,
well, I can tell you that it's been cold over here for about like 3-4 weeks now. So yeah. I feel you, except this is like natural habitat. This is what it always is in Canada. So yeah, that stereotype rings true. Trust me.
Yeah, I feel a little bit more at home actually when it's cold out here. It reminds me of being back east for the winter and stuff. So it's actually been kind of nice. I mean, I'm a little miserable having to, sleep in sweatpants because the insulation in all the houses sucks, but I'll get over it. So
yeah, that sounds like they didn't prepare the houses for 40 degrees, which I'm going to pretend like I can translate that into Celsius. But it just sounds cold when people say like 80s warm and 40s cold. I just assume that it's pretty cold. So, well, let's get started. We got 5 really good topics to attack today on Crossing Borders. So I'm going to put the ball in your court, Scott. Which one do you want to start with? Do you want to do Sixers, MLB, Phillies, Eagles, or Flyers?
Let's start off with the Eagles here. I'm getting all pumped up for the game against the Miami Dolphins today, so let's go down that route.
Okay, well, easy enough. That's exactly what I was kind of thinking. So Carson Wentz has faced quite a bit of criticism over the lack of offense and the struggles with the receivers. The finger has been pointed in a number of different directions, including Carson Wentz's direction, Howie Roseman's direction, Dougie P., Mike Groh. Basically, you name a name, they've been blamed. Our big question that we're looking at is Wentz at fault for the struggles of the receivers in the offense so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to not blame him at all. And I know the arguments against it are that, he has no receivers left. And we started the year out with a decent receiving core. The Eagles would be in a very different spot if Deshaun Jackson never had that stupid abdomen injury, or if he got surgery at the beginning of the year, which he should have done, which no one really understands why he didn't. If Alshon Jeffrey didn't get hurt and, was playing more consistently, and if Nelson Aguilar could catch a pass. But the problems with that is I think they all need to share equal blame. I don't think you can blame Carson Wentz for just this, but he's definitely not exempt from the blame. He had one of his worst games ever that I remember as an Eagle last week against the Seahawks. And that's okay. I mean, he's still a young guy. We all forget because he puts up such MVP caliber numbers that, he is still young and still learning and dealing with a ton of pressure in the city. That doesn't mean you get a pass. He still needs to take his licks here. And I'm not saying to get rid of him by any means. I'm not saying to lose faith in him by any means, but he hasn't had the best year at this point.
Yeah, I'm definitely completely counter to you. I think that he should be exempt from that blame, that it has absolutely almost basically nothing to do with Carson Wentz, the issues that they've had. I think this lands on the shoulders. I'm not even going to blame players. This lands on Peterson and Groh not producing effective enough play calling, not helping Carson Wentz to build confidence and rapport with his receivers with completely inconsistent and lackluster play calling. I know Roseman for not realizing the need at wide receiver beyond Deshaun Jackson. It feels as though he just doesn't even realize how bad the situation or how dire the situation was if we lost one, if even more than one of the receivers that was there. I mean, if you look briefly at some of the stats for Carson Wentz, he's having an above average season. It's a slightly above average season. And I mean, the only reason it doesn't look beautiful on paper is because we've actually been able to establish a bit of a run game, and we've had a run game this year. But I mean, he's got 23 drops. His offense has 23 drops, which is over 2 per game, which puts him as a number 4 in the NFL at the quarterback position for players dropping passes from him. His supporting cast ranks 29th among quarterbacks, which there's 32 quarterbacks, so you can only imagine that does not help one bit. He's just shy of his career average in completions. He's on pace to achieve his career average in touchdowns, which is 21. His interception percentage is the lowest of his career. And all those stats point to Carson Wentz is doing everything in his power, and there's the people around him who are not helping, who are not supporting, and who are the cause for the issues. I mean, I don't want to not put the blame on players. The players do have to be blamed, so I'm going with the receivers to be blamed, because look at some of the drops Nelson Aguilar said, look at some of the drops Alshon Jeffries had, look at some of the drops that everybody's had. Our best receiver is Miles Sanders, who's a running back. So it's just insane to think about that he's having a slightly above average season from his career perspective. Imagine if he just had actual targets to throw to and actually had trust and was able to build rapport in his wide receivers. I think this lands absolutely 0% on Carson Wentz.
I think it's not fair to just look at statistics this year, though. And I'm a big stats guy normally. However, in this instance, if you remember at key points in the game, Carson Wentz just hasn't seemed to perform the way that he used to, or the way that he has in the past couple of years. And I do think it's because of the rapport that he has with his receivers just isn't there. However, I put that on him. When players aren't getting along, or I mean, he can't do anything about their lackluster talent, right? They're just some guys out there right now that aren't suited for the NFL, because our core is hurt. But it's on him, it's on the other receivers, it's on all of them to get together and build that rapport. There used to be all those videos of or if you've ever been to Eagles training camp, which I wouldn't imagine you have, but if you go there, they're guys that they're off on the side, they're practicing together, trying to get themselves, ready to go for the year. They need to continue doing that throughout the year and practicing extra. I mean, this is their time to shine, and if they're not playing well, they need to stay late after work, which for them is playing football, and they need to build that rapport together. So Doug Peterson can't make them get along. He could have better play calling. I mean, Doug Peterson, we're getting what we get out of Doug Peterson here, right? To me, he's a guy that he has incredible play calling, but he also takes some stupid risks. And we've been getting, I think, the worst side of that this year. I mean, he could be better, but at the same time, the players do need to get along a little bit more. They need to have more faith in one another. There just isn't a lot of that, and it's a weird environment around the team right now. And we still do have a chance to make the playoffs magically because our division sucks so bad. But, going forward, I think they need to sit down, and maybe the Thanksgiving season is that time when, they sit down and break bread or whatever. I mean, we've been saying on TJ's One of Us for the Sixers that they need to sit down, take a little break, realize what they have to do, and just shut up and do it. And I think they have it in them. but it starts with Carson Wentz. He needs to take the leadership role, and he needs to make everyone realize that they're not good, and they need to help him out more.
I don't doubt that Carson Wentz has to be a leader, and I think he's proven a leader because he's proven that through this all, he's able to carry the team no matter what. He's been probably arguably the most valuable player for us in the first half of the season, because beyond the defense, he's keeping the team in the game when he's able to make something out of nothing, which he's almost constantly doing, is making something out of nothing. But I think largely this has to be Mike Groh, who has to take the reins and say we have to work together. Mike Groh came out and said that they worked harder than they ever had all season the week prior to the Seahawks game, and then they went into the Seahawks game and they probably put up, well, you talked about it, they put up a complete dud. It was one of Carson Wentz's worst games of his career, but at the same time, we barely got by the sticks on any type of play call or anything. They are allowing the other teams to control the pace of the game, and that in large part comes from Mike Groh and Doug Peterson. They are the ones who have to focus on creating the playbook, making the right play call so that we get beyond 10 yards every time that we're trying to make a play. And I think that's hurting Carson Wentz as well, because when you think about it, if all he's doing is looking for someone 10 yards down and nobody's open, well, what can he do except hold on to the ball and go down, which is a whole nother completely annoying point that blows my mind, is him getting rid of the ball and realizing a done play when a play's done. And when your guys are only going 10 or 15 yards, it's pretty easy to realize a done play, a gone play, a dud play, and when the defense just has your number and you just have to throw it away over the top of somebody's head. I mean, yeah, you're going to miss some passes as a quarterback. Yeah, you're going to have some drops as a receiver, but it shouldn't be to the point this season that we've reached, especially for the wide receivers. And to sit there and talk about Miles Sanders as the best wide receiver is just insulting to the wide receiving core that was complimented as one of the deepest in the league at the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually the Seahawks game was one of the best things that happened to the Eagles here at the end of the year. Now, hear me out, because that's a weird statement, but I didn't think we were ever going to win that game. And I think us going in there and playing them really tough and losing at the end would have been heartbreaking. The fact that we went in there and just did not show up is a real good time for them to do some soul searching and realize, like, all right, do we want to make the playoffs, or are we going to give up here? And giving up is never an option in Philadelphia, especially when we're right on the cusp of being able to make the playoffs. I mean, so now we have a Miami Dolphins team coming in about 30 minutes, and I think Carson Wentz needs to go out and put an all-time performance together. I'm expecting 350 yards and 2 touchdowns from him here, and I think all is right in the world, and I will forgive him for everything I just said if he goes out there and does that against the horrid Miami Dolphins.
I feel like it's not very hard to soul search when you realize 4 of the 5 teams you played in the season have 2 wins or less. That definitely makes a soul searching a hell of a lot easier to do. So, I mean, I want to say that I think the season would look a lot better, and we wouldn't be having discussions like this if we took one of the 2 games between the Patriots and the Seahawks. Me on the Kelly Green Hour, we talked about it. We entered that stretch of 4 games with the bye week in between against really high caliber teams. We talked about how important it was that we had to come out, or I think it was 6 games, and we really needed to come out with a win or 2. I think we came out with 2 wins. But I was really hoping we'd at least go 3-3 or 4-2 through that stretch of games. And that back end was where I thought that we were going to be able to win one of those 2 games. We were either going to be able to get the Patriots or we were going to be able to get the Seahawks. And at the end of the day, we got neither of them because our offense was complete garbage, because our receivers cannot play football. And I feel bad for Jim Schwartz, who took a ton of flack heading into through the start of the season when he was playing with some of the scrubs of the team at this point, because Cravon LeBlanc is back, Sidney Jones is riding the pine, Jalen Mills is back. The secondary looks completely different. The defense looks completely different with Nigel Bradham, with all of them back in the lineup. He took a ton of flack for playing with what he had, and I thought he did really good. And now the offense is taking the flack, but you don't hear the outcry for a Doug Peterson's job as much as you heard the outcry for Jim Schwartz's job when Jim Schwartz was going through the troubles. But I digress. I'm sure we can have many more discussions about the Eagles games. As you know, I do the Kelly Green Hour, so I could talk Eagles football and I can rip into Doug Peterson and the receivers for hours on end. But we're going to move on because it's clear that Carson Wentz is not to blame. But
and I will take actually a second here to compliment you and LJ for the Kelly Green Hour. It's become my favorite Eagles podcast, so I hope that ANYP listeners out there all give it a listen. It's by far the most statistical and by far the most professionally run show on the entire network. So everyone get out there and give it a listen. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Just for the listeners out there, I did not ask for this plug. That is a 100% shameless plug by Scott. So with that in mind, we'll move on. I'm picking a TJ's One of Us topic here because I know that me and you completely see differently on this topic. When we decided on the topic and I said, this is my stance, it was so easy because you were completely on the opposite side of the fence. So recently, Greg Popovich, Brett Brown used to be his assistant in San Antonio, criticized Philly fans for being so critical of Brett Brown. We have recently watched some extremely successful runs to start the season by the Los Angeles Lakers, the Boston Celtics, and even the true surprise team in my eyes, the Toronto Raptors. Is Brett Brown to blame for the early season struggles based on the success of the teams that I just named? Do you think Brett Brown is more to blame than some of the players, or what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's fair to blame Brett Brown yet, and here's why. Because there have been challenges throughout the early season. I mean, when the offense doesn't show up and the Sixers can't shoot for the life of them, when they're struggling at the end of games or struggling to close things out, he's made adjustments, and it's been very clear with Tobias Harris. I think he's the best example here. Tobias Harris was in one of the biggest slumps I've ever seen from a player paid as much as he is. He was playing horrible. I mean, he didn't make a three for 3 games or something like that. I think he missed 15 to 23s in a row or something, which is just an all-time kind of slump for a player of his caliber. And he bounced back. I think Brett Brown deserves a lot of credit for taking the heat, as he should. He's the man at the helm. He's in the front office now. He's our guy, so he has to take his licks when he can. And he's done an excellent job of adjusting and winning games. And it's a very easy thing to forget that there are 82 games in basketball, and all you have to do is make the playoffs now. I mean, the Sixers are going to be in the top half of the East. It's okay. I think right now we're sitting 5th place in the conference, which is more than fine with me. There's plenty of time left in the year and plenty of time for them to just build their rapport as a team, because they're making those adjustments. If they weren't making those adjustments and they were still losing every game at the end, they had a big win the other night or yesterday against the Pacers at the end, where Ben Simmons just came out and had that crazy dunk at the end and was just playing an all-time defensive level. They're falling on their laurels here, and they're sticking to defense. They know that's who they are as a team. They know they're not good at shooting, and they're working on it. And Brett Brown is at the helm of all this. I think in basketball, it has to fall to the coach, and he has to make the changes for them. And I think he's doing a pretty good job here. I think it's not fair to fully just say that he's horrible yet. Trust me, I will give Brett Brown the licks he deserves throughout the year. But I mean, I am just a huge Brett Brown fan, and I don't think he deserves it yet.
Well, yeah, I completely disagree. I understand everybody loves to talk about Brett Brown and his adjustments. He's a king of adjustments. He's a king of always making adjustments. Instead of coming with a proactive, well thought out game plan, we have to look at his adjustments. We have to compliment his adjustments. So I look at it and I see there's teams out there like the Lakers who don't need to be coached. You have Anthony Davis and you have LeBron James. LeBron James, he runs teams. He doesn't need coaches. Then there's some teams who need to be coached. The Raptors, the Nuggets, who are having great success, and the Sixers, who were getting back on track, but we had our struggles to start the season. I think all too often we're seeing some players at a position are lost. I've seen enough of Joel Embiid at the three-point line. I've seen enough of Ben Simmons at the three-point line because he's fooling nobody. Just because he took 1 3 ball, he's not fooling people by standing out there. And Embiid is not fooling anybody by standing out there with his 30% three-point shot. Those guys, you need to be coached. You need to be coached to be in the right position. You need to position your players for success and have the proper game plan night in and night out. And like I said, Brett Brown is a king of adjustments, but we cannot constantly be adjusting because sometimes it's a little too late to make those adjustments like I think we saw during the playoffs last year against the Toronto Raptors. If you're making the adjustments 2 or 3 games deep, it's too late when you saw a guy like Nick Nurse who was making those adjustments the very next game, and it clearly showed as a complete difference maker. But Brett Brown needs to come and be more prepared right away in my eyes. He needs to position his players for success. I know that he can't be out there telling Embiid not to stand at the three-point line, but that's part of coaching. You coach him that the three-point line is not his spot. It doesn't matter who is positioned where. That is not your spot. You need to be inside. You are a 7'2", 300-pound mammoth who very few people in the NBA can move, and you're standing at the three-point line. You need to be a coach at that point and make sure that Embiid knows that you don't stand out there. That's not where you stand. Same with Ben Simmons. You do well driving. So find a spot where you can get the open lane, and go, because no one's stopping Ben Simmons. We have 2 of the most powerful guys in the league, and we have to wait for Brett Brown and for the team to adjust to that. So, I honestly think we shouldn't be behind Toronto. We shouldn't be behind Boston this early or late or ever in the season. But the coaches know the strengths of the players and how to game plan for success. I think it's title or bust this year for Brett Brown. I think we've had enough. The process is over. He is set up to succeed, and the ball's in his court to make stuff happen. I kind of laid back a bit last season. I listened to Shane. I shouldn't have done it. I listened to Shane, and I gave him the time of day. And the start of this season is showing similar frustrations to what we've seen in recent memory, I think.
Yeah, the Embiid point is a pretty good one. It drives me nuts when he's standing out the three-point line. I mean, he needs to stop doing that. Can he shoot a 3 every once in a while? Sure. But he's the guy that every time he throws one up, whether it goes in or not, I'm constantly yelling no at my TV. It is extremely frustrating. And that's what the general media just seems to not get about the Sixers. And the local media doesn't get it either. I don't get it. No one really does, but he's constantly been doing that. And I don't know if there's a way to fully just stop him from doing it, because there gets to a point in the game where Embiid just kind of goes on autopilot mode. And I don't think Brett Brown screaming at him until he's blue in the face is going to change the way that he reacts. It does need to change, though, because if we want to win a championship, he can't just be out there chucking up 5 threes a game. It's not worth his time. And he's not a 3-point shooter. I mean, his shot looks fine, and he shows stints of making threes, but he just needs to stop doing it. But with that in mind, though, I think it's too early in the year for us to be just frustrated with the Sixers. 14-6 right now is not where I thought we would be. However, I'm fine with it. We're a quarter of the way through the year. We're firmly in the middle of the conference. I mean, the Miami Heat are going to die off. I actually do think the Raptors are pretty good. I think they're there to stay. I think the Pacers are going to make a push when Oladipo comes back a bit here. I think they're a decent team. I think that the rest of the conference is just so shitty that the Sixers can kind of figure out their issues here and, switch into the top 3 or 4, depending on if the Celtics decide to stop playing basketball, and, just kind of move on and make it into the playoffs. And that's when the real fun starts. That's when the real test is. So I've been trying to bite my tongue on Brett Brown here and not judge him too harshly at this point in the season. However, I do agree with you, not so much title and bust. I think it's Eastern Conference Finals or bust, because the West is so good this year. However, he does need to make a run or else his job's on the line. And it's a good thing he's got that Australian national team job to fall back on. And, he can go tan in the off season and worry about if he still has a job with the Sixers, because you're right. I mean, the process is over. He needs to nut up or shut up here and take his team far into the playoffs. So hopefully he does it. Hopefully he keeps making his adjustments and keep making entertaining games and make them a little bit less frustrating for me, because I've been, I think my blood pressure is up 20 points watching the Sixers this year, because nothing's ever easy with them.
Yeah, no, nothing's ever easy in Philadelphia sports whatsoever. But you kind of alluded to it. It's only a quarter of the way through the season, so why stress? There's 4 quarters in basketball, so it's just like we're at the end of the first quarter in a basketball game. How much longer do you want to wait for Brett Brown to adjust? How much longer do you want to wait for this coaching staff to adjust and to get the team on the same page, to get everyone on the same page? Embiid, you do this, Simmons, you do this, instead of Embiid does everything right one game and then completely forgets all his morals and his positions the next game and looks completely out of place. How, like, do we sit there and do we say at halftime we start worrying, when we get halfway through the season that we start worrying, or 3 quarters of the way? I think at the quarter point of a season is a really good way. I think it's the same in hockey. It's the same in basketball. It's the same in football. Football a bit less because the season's a lot less. So a quarter would only be 4 games. But basketball and hockey, where you have 82 games, a quarter of the way through the season is a good spot to start reacting to what you're seeing, because you've had 21, 22 games to figure out what you're doing, to make the adjustments. We cannot have Brett Brown going into playoff series making adjustments in games 3 and 4. These are the times of the season where you make those adjustments and you make it happen. And in order for Brett Brown to prove to me that he is a good, competent coach, he has to make those adjustments and start making them happen at least by the halfway point of the year. If I don't see those adjustments and we're still blowing 20-point leads and Embiid still doesn't realize he's 7'2" and belongs in the paint and the paint only, then I'm going to start questioning things. So I still think he carries a lot more blame than a lot of people want to put on him, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for just another 20 games, because I think halfway through is enough for me to see and to really know what I'm going to get from the rest for the remaining half of the season.
Yeah, so let's run this one back in 20 games again here, and we can just kind of take this conversation on steroids then, because I agree. Another 20 games and you've seen what you're going to get out of teams. You don't play 40 games and then make an entire shift. I mean, that does happen occasionally in the NBA, but it won't happen with this team. So let's definitely run this one back.
I'll give a shameless plug. TJ's One of Us is a great Sixers and NBA show. Although the takes at times may be a little incorrect, that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to them. So definitely check out TJ's One of Us as well.
What, you don't think Zaire Smith's the 7th best player in the NBA? Come on.
No, and I think Brett Brown needs to take more blame too. So, but I know that the Always Next Year podcast, based on its name and its namesake, we like to always give more chances than there should be. And there's a lot of Brett Brown truthers within the Always Next Year podcast crew, and I just happen to not be one of them. But we will revisit this, and we will run this back in 20 games. Don't you worry. I'm not going to forget about this one. Right. So what's next? We got 2 MLB topics, and we got the Philadelphia Flyers.
Let's get into some hockey here. It's cold. It's hockey season, and I'm starting to get into it over here. So let's do it.
All right. Yeah. So recently, this kind of we made this topic and decided on this topic about 2 weeks ago. Since then, the media has quieted down on this topic, but we're ready to bring it back to life. Johnny Hockey, to trade or not to trade? For those listeners who may come and listen for the football or the basketball or the baseball, Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau, he's a Philadelphia native playing for the Calgary Flames, wasting his career away in Calgary when the Philadelphia Flyers are clearly preparing themselves to make a run. They had the most points in the month of November in franchise history, tied for most points with 24 points in the month of November, and we're off to one of our best starts in a few seasons. So do we trade for Johnny Hockey, or do we kind of roll with what we got right now?
Oh, fuck yeah, I think we got to trade for him. I've been just kind of dipping around the internet on this one, and you're right, the media's died down a bit here on it. However, I mean, he's just wasting away his talent. They don't seem to be fully content with him up in Calgary, and I think he's just right for the taking right now. As you said, the Flyers are on a good run here, and we're in a spot to really just take over and, make a good run for it this year. I mean, it's been a bit since the Flyers have made a serious run for the Cup. So I think this is a year that we go boom or bust, and we take a big talent on like Johnny Gaudreau, and we go for it. I'm a firm believer of making big trades that fully change a team's trajectory for the year, and I think getting him onto the Flyers will make a huge jump, and it'll show everyone that we're serious right now. It'll get the team a little more fired up, and I think we'll make a good run, and now is a great time in the year to do it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to stay. I've been on the fence on it, but I'm going to go with the to not trade unless, and this is a big exception, they eat a big contract. Because Johnny Gaudreau is making less than a lot of our highest paid players like Jacob Voracek and James Van Riemsdyk right now. And we're sitting there eating some awful cap on two guys who, granted, Voracek has started to become a little bit more consistent, but I will continue to stand by that contract. Will not age well. He is an inconsistent hockey player, and that's how it's going to be. He may give you close to a point a game for an entire season, but ultimately at the end of the day, that would be because he got 25 points in 10 games and then went on a streak of doing nothing for 15 games, and it will go back and forth like that all season. I still think that contract will age very poorly, and a contract like Johnny Gaudreau's would look a little bit more team-friendly and nicer. But I'm going to go with no, because I think that we can continue to play with the players that we have. Alain Vigneault is holding people accountable. He moved Voracek down the line. He took away minutes from JVR. He has made the right decisions in calling up Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, Philip Myers. He healthy scratched Ghost. It looks like that might have woken him up a little bit. So he's holding people more accountable. He's got the right team in place, I think, to make a run. Maybe wait until next year's offseason to see what we need to do after the fact, see if we can't get rid of some of those contracts. I mean, like I said, I'm a strong believer, I think, in the last episode of letting Jake Voracek go, but trying not to have to mortgage away some of our future to get someone to take on that contract. Just wait for the Seattle expansion team, leave him open for the taking and get rid of him in that way, or make some sort of trade where you give up hopefully not a first-round pick, but some sort of draft pick for them to take his contract off of your books one way or the other. I'm a strong proponent in waiting for that, but I think that the ask for Johnny Hockey would be significant, and significantly more than I would give up. I think it would be a high-end draft pick, which we don't need the high-end draft picks. We have an amazing prospect pool, but at the same time, they would also ask for at least one prospect and one actual player within the league right now. So I think you'd be looking at a first, second-round pick, high-end prospect, and someone who's playing in the league right now, which could be a Jacob Voracek to eat that bad contract, or it could be a JVR to eat that bad contract. But I just don't think it's worth it. I think if we waited out, some of those bad contracts can be weeded out in the expansion draft coming up for Seattle. But at the same time, as much as I'd love Johnny Hockey, I think we have a good team in play. We have a good coach, and I'm excited to see what this season holds. And I don't think a whole lot of changes need to be made. Any rash decisions need to be made.
I think this is a first year where a Philadelphia team doesn't need to make a ton of changes to still be good. This never happens in any sport here. So good on the Flyers for that one. But yeah, I think picking him up definitely doesn't hurt anything here. Giving up a little bit of the, more, or giving up a draft pick and a guy from the great farm system that we have definitely is a big ask. I mean, the contract thing is a tough one. I mean, I would rather not have to eat this Voracek contract the whole way through and pray that he goes to the expansion team, but it seems to be the only path there. So I think it would have to be the right deal, and we would get a hell of a player in Johnny Hockey who has been performing, then underperforming, and then performing again. So you don't exactly know what you're going to get out of him. However, I think a new home would just have him playing back at the high caliber that he's capable of. So I think we go for it here, but yeah, I'm just coming into this hockey thing now as well. So take what I have to say on some of this stuff for a few more weeks with a grain of salt. I mean, I'm spending my days, weirdly enough, reading more about hockey than I ever have right now. So I'm going to shock you in about 2 weeks when I come in with some super technical niche argument, but we're not quite there as of yet. So at this point, yeah.
I cannot wait for you to be able to talk more hockey, because me and Shane, when we used to go back and forth on this show, we went back and forth pretty good with hockey takes. because we are both big on hockey, and we went back and forth pretty good on Eagles takes because we're both big on the Eagles. I'm less, technically savvy in the baseball world, so he could really take me to school on those takes. But so it'll be good to have you around with the hockey takes and being able to have more of a better discussion as far as the hockey world goes. But yeah, I just it's the contracts that I don't want to have to eat, but at the same time, I don't want to end up mortgaging the future. Like I said, we do have a great farm system. We have a really good farm system. We have a decent team built right now. And with the expansion draft, you dump one of those salaries, hopefully either JVR or Jacob Voracek, and then you start freeing up some cap space, because I think that a lot of these young players, these studs, are going to start coming up, like a Farabee, like a Frost, and in a couple of years down the road, they're going to get paid. Carter Hart, we're going to have to pay them when they come out of their entry-level contracts. So taking on Johnny Hockey isn't a bad option, but I think that we have a farm system that we can have a lot of trust in, and we have a coach that we can trust and a manager that we can trust. It's just a matter of dumping one of these contracts, because some of them are not going to age well. Kevin Hayes, JVR, Jacob Voracek, they all won't age well, and that's what hurts. Thank God Fletch locked up Ivan Provorov for the steal of a deal he got, and Travis Konechny for the steal of a deal he got, and Couturier, who's locked up for a couple more years in a steal of a deal that wasn't by Fletcher, but it's still a steal of a deal made by a former manager. So I would be interested to revisit this topic down the road again as well, closer to the trade deadline, seeing where we're at. But I definitely think that the only moves that need to be made would be to get rid of some of those contracts, because we have some high-end contracts and a lot of highly skilled young players that we don't want to lose because of these high-end, poorly aging contracts. So interested to see what happens with Chuck Fletcher in the future. So now we get on to the Phillies, the singular sport that is currently not in action, but there's still a little bit of talk and chatter going on.
The winter meeting's coming up, yeah.
Exactly, and tons and tons and tons of rumors about the Phillies being in on this guy, the Phillies being in on that guy, Phillies basically being in on anyone who has FA beside their name. You can bet the Phillies are chatting with him. So my question, or the topic that we want to talk about today, is, do the Phillies go all in, balls deep, leveraging the last of our high-end prospects, or do we go into free agency and hope that John Middleton's stupid money comment is actually true, and we just start throwing money out there and screw the salary cap? It's all about that luxury tax. What are your thoughts?
I would rather see us trade and pick up, say, Francisco Lindor or someone to that caliber, and give up a couple prospects. I'm not really one to mortgage the farm system here. Philadelphia has always had a pretty good farm system, and I mean, that's how we won a World Series back in the day. It wasn't with trades. However, I'm just so against spending the crazy money that they want to spend, because in baseball it doesn't work. It's proven. I mean, we paid all this money for Bryce Harper, and he's serviceable now, and he's fine. But guess what? He's not going to make a change. I mean, he's not going to just single-handedly win 40 games for his team, because in baseball you can't do that. There's just so much more to it. So I would be okay trading for. I mean, Francisco Lindor is an incredible talent. I would think he makes a big impact here. But I'm so all in on just getting middle-of-the-road pitchers here, not spending crazy money and not getting Garrett Cole. I think Cole Hamels is actually, the way that the rumors are shaking out, he's going to get almost too big of a contract for what I think is worth it in Philadelphia. So if we have to do something, I think we should trade and pick up one or two more guys. I'm trying to look up Francisco Lindor's contract here because I don't have it up in front of me. But it would be somewhat of a large ask for us to go get him here. But spending money doesn't guarantee results in baseball, and there's nothing worse than having an incredibly large payroll and everyone else in the entire league laughing at you because someone turned out to be a dud because you gave them a shit ton of money. Cough, cough, Jake Arrieta. Like, people are still going to be making fun of us for that one. But you got to do something. So I don't know which of the two is better here, but I would rather trade and pick up some more of a sure thing right now?
I think I'd be on. I'm on the free agency side of it. We have a decent farm system, but it's pretty heavy set in like the top 10, top 15 guys, and then it kind of falls off a bit. So I mean, you don't want to completely mortgage the farm. You want to be able to have some of these guys to back you up, and I think free agency is a good spot to go and get your depth pieces and get those big name pieces like we did with Bryce Harper, like hopefully we do with Garrett Cole. Obviously, there's always going to be contracts that bite you in the ass, so like you said, Jake Arrieta, but that shouldn't mean that you shy away from free agency. When you go through free agency, you don't end up having to sell people. You don't end up having to get rid of pieces that are important to your team now or that could be important to your team in the future. I think that in this case, we need to stand our ground. We need to spend that stupid money that John Middleton said he wanted to spend. If he's willing to go into the luxury tax, if he's willing to pay all those extra dollars, I'm 100% on board for doing that, because I see no reason why we shouldn't be spending that extra bit of money. Because if we're all in, you might as well go all in. You might as well go for it all. Spend that money on Garrett Cole. If Cole Hamels is fine with getting 1 or 2 years, throw that money at Cole Hamels, because our current pitching staff is not pretty after Aaron Nola. Well, that's about it. Right after Aaron Nola, it's not pretty. So you take a Cole Hamels for a year or two. You take Garrett Cole and give him that monster contract, that 5-year contract, player option, 6-year, whatever you got to do. You get those types of players. You get the Dylan Betances of the world to shore up that bullpen that was good, but an extra arm in that bullpen could just be the difference maker in them being able to really shut things down for you in 7, 8, and 9. And I think the free agency is the way to go, because, I mean, sadly this season, free agency was the way to go for us, but we got eaten alive by injuries. Robertson, McCutchen, those guys came over. McCutchen was having a killer season. He got hurt. Robertson, we didn't really know what we were getting because he got hurt pretty quickly as well. So, I mean, as long as the luck is on our side, I am all in on going with John Middleton and spending that stupid money and doing what you need to do without selling the farm and keeping the picks and the prospects you have intact.
Yeah, I guess it is easy, and I literally just did it. It's easy to forget that the Phils were set up and they were rolling at the beginning of last year before Kutch's injury. That was a heartbreaker. We'll get him back a little bit here. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be on the same role as he was last year, but the lineup was just entirely different when he was in it. I mean, he was a phenomenal leadoff hitter. There are plenty of starting pitchers out there now that I'm looking a bit more into it, and I'm kind of just going to a complete 360 on myself in live, just arguing here. There are way more starting pitchers available than I remember just off the top of my head, and middle of the road guys. I'm going to go back to, I think we can pick up Dallas Keuchel for a reasonable contract. Again, I don't know why they didn't get him last year. Honestly, I think the entire division would be fully different if we had gone after Dallas Keuchel at the beginning of the year instead of getting fucked over by, Scott Boras and the stupid Bryce Harper contract and having to wait until, the 11th hour to sign that. Hopefully we don't get locked up in anything like that this year, but there's no guarantees. I mean, baseball free agency is a shit show that just kind of all waits on one big guy or two big guys like Garrett Cole here. I mean, he's just going to start the waterfall a bit, but I'm hoping that the Phils won't get fooled by that again. I'm hoping, there's so many rumors of them going for Garrett Cole, and I think that is just such a wrong move, that there are so many middle of the road guys out there that if you can sign them before you get to before Garrett Cole signs a huge deal, it will put us in a better spot. I mean, Cole Hamels is weirdly becoming one of the second or third most coveted pitcher right now. I mean, of people that are going to leave their teams, like Ryu's open for his contract. I think Zach Wheeler is kind of falling off my radar a bit. I'd be okay with him, but Bumgarner's not going to leave the Giants. Strasburg's not going to leave Washington, and if he does, the Nats are idiots, and I would love to not have to face Strasburg.
No, the age there is a concern for me. Strasburg, injury history and age. Not really. He's going to probably end up going for just a bit less than Garrett Cole, and that if it's a bit less than Garrett Cole, I'd take the extra stretch and go for the home run ball with Garrett Cole in that instance. Go all in if you're going to go all in that situation. But yeah, I clearly won this one because I literally turned you around right in the middle of the show, live on the air. I turned this around. But yeah, I keep the few prospects that we have, keep the picks that you have, continue to build that farm system because eventually money can only talk for so long. Even for John Middleton, who's all for spending stupid money, money only talks for so long. And then eventually you got to start bringing up some young guys. You got to start using those prospects, just like the Flyers have started to do. Money talked. We have a 4 or 5 probably I'd say 3 or 4 real atrocities of contracts that are going to age very poorly, but we have a great farm system. So the Phillies need to consider a similar approach to that this farm system can learn from the players that are there, but that we're not eating these contracts for 5, 6, 7, 8, 13 years. But our last topic for the day, before we get to go and watch some of the Eagles hopefully kicking the Dolphins' ass, is cheating in baseball. We recently saw the huge news break about the Houston Astros stealing signals during the playoffs a couple years back, the year that they won the World Series. And basically, it became this huge uproar. They're wondering what the punishment will be, what the punishment should be. And the Astros have really made a mockery of their franchise, especially with the words of their manager and having to fire that assistant manager, et cetera, et cetera. And then the cheating thing came out. They've really made a mockery of a really good baseball franchise this season, this offseason, and this playoff season. So what are your thoughts on cheating in baseball? Do you care? Should there be harsh penalties? What are your thoughts?
So I've played baseball all my life, and I think that one of the things that is going unseen here, and it comes up every once in a while when an actual player, an actual former player gets to talk about this cheating scandal, but everyone is trying to steal signs at all times. Everyone is looking for an extra edge. And guess what? There's tons of cheating in baseball. Because if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I hate using, just vapid phrases like that. But in baseball, that is so true. You're always trying to get that extra little edge. And when you get caught, you just kind of like nut up and go like, okay, well, I got caught. What are you going to do to me? The penalties aren't that harsh yet. So if Major League Baseball wants to actually do something here, they need to have a penalty that's more than just taking a draft pick or two, because there's 1,000 draft picks in the MLB draft. That literally does nothing to stall a franchise, and it's actually going to incentivize people to cheat more. I think they need to have a serious financial penalty of some sort with the Astros limiting their cap or doing something moving them forward that is almost devastating to the franchise for the next 5 years. I think it's the only way to do it. I don't have a problem necessarily with the cheating except for the video stuff. The video stuff is pretty shitty. You blatantly just can't do that and use technology to cheat. However, the hitting the trash can thing or the, stealing signs, that's going on all the time in baseball. And guess what? You're never going to change it. Whether it's Little League, it's middle school, high school, or the majors. There's always just going to be someone cheating that way. The only way to stop it is to put harsh penalties in place, and it has to be something that will stall the Astros for the next couple of years. I do have an extra question for you here, but I want to hear your take, Connor. Go for it.
Basically, so I guess I kind of preluded my point that I don't know as much about baseball and stuff, but I do want to make it clear. I'm going to say no, I don't care about cheating in baseball. There's cheating in all sports. There's cheating all over the place. It's just a matter of, does it get out? Does it not get out? And how much does it impact the game at hand? Like I said, maybe it's because I don't love baseball, and the fact that the sport is in the middle of a spiral downward as far as attendance goes, as far as income goes. Teams aren't afraid to spend tons and tons of money to try and fill those massive stadiums. But let's just face it, of the 4 major sports, baseball is struggling the most right now, and a cheating scandal is only making things worse for it. cheating shouldn't be that simple in a professional sport. It shouldn't be able to come out that simply in a professional sport either. Pitchers and catchers and their coaches are professionals. They get paid a lot of money to do what they do. And it shouldn't be that easy to give the signs away. You should be able to make complex enough signals and things that you shouldn't be able to watch a tape over and over again and say, oh, if the catcher moves his thumb inside of his glove like that, see that, notice that gives something away. These guys get paid a ton of money, and if you're giving stuff away in how you do something, or the fact, I think there was one pitcher, it was just the way during the playoffs, they said it was the way he did something right before he threw a pitch that gave away what type of pitch it might be. So like, these guys get paid so much money, and you're going to sit there and tell me that they can give signs away or signals away just based on their movements, or just if you record for hours and hours on end. These guys get paid a lot of money for a reason. And if I'm paying Garrett Cole $150 million over, probably more than that, if I'm paying him $200 million over 5 years, I expect that he's not going to pivot his foot in a way that gives away a fastball or a curveball pitch. So I think penalties aren't going to change this. The penalty is to the sport. It hurts the sport. It hurts the team. And it ultimately expresses a lack of professionalism by some teams and just creates more negative media attention around the sport. I think at the end of the day, like I alluded to earlier, baseball is the struggling of the four sports, and the issue runs a lot deeper than stealing signs. It's a sport in crisis in my eyes.
I will say here, I think I agree with you. Baseball is struggling. However, I think things like this are actually good for the sport. And think about when the Patriots got caught doing a very similar thing, and pretty much all it did in the NFL was just make people hate the Patriots more. But guess what? It's the winner. Baseball is not on the forefront of anyone's mind most of the time here, but now it is, because the Astros scandal has broken and people are talking about baseball. So any kind of time that the major leagues can get in the media at all and people are talking about it, I think it's a good thing. It's created kind of a heel to take the wrestling turn on it here, and people aren't going to like the Astros anymore. But guess what? They're going to tune in and hope that the Astros get their ass kicked, and I don't think they will. I don't think this is really going to stall the franchise in Houston at all, unless they, impose some crazy penalty to them. And financial might be the way to go, or I think that's really the only way to do it, because draft picks don't do shit in baseball. But the question that I have for you is, let's say that there's a significant financial penalty for the next 5 years in Houston that precludes them from being good again. They have had a hell of a run in the last 3 years. Would you take that in Philadelphia for 2 World Series wins, to just give up 5 years of baseball and to have your team be just kind of the bad boys of the league now?
I'm gonna say no, because like I expressed before, it expresses a lack of professionalism, and it just creates the negative media around the sport, especially in Philadelphia, where we already have negative media attention constantly because we're a crazy fan base. I just don't think it makes sense to cheat for a year, to cheat for a year or two, get a couple championships out of it, and then be bad for 5 or 6 years because you're facing these insane financial penalties. I think it's just bad for the sport that teams would even consider going in this direction. I would rather win knowing that we won fairly and knowing that we won based on the talent we have and the people we have in place, versus the way that the Astros did it, who, without stealing signs, probably still would have won that. That's the thing that a lot of people don't get. I don't think at the end of the day that this was the be-all to end-all, that if they didn't steal signs, they wouldn't have won the championship. If they did steal signs, they were going to win the championship. I just don't think that that's the way it went. I think they had the talent, they had the skill, they had the team, and they had the personnel in place to make that run with or without the cheating.
See, I'm going to go exactly the opposite here. I was at the World Series when the Phils won in 2008. I was at the game when they clinched, and you know what? What memory I would still have if the Phils got caught up in a cheating scandal? Being at that World Series. It was an all-time moment in my life, something I'll never forget. I'll be telling my kids, my grandkids about that. I don't care about the cheating scandal at that point. I care about winning as a fan, and World Series are such a rare thing that we may never see another one in our entire life. I hope that we do, but However, there isn't a guarantee with that. So I would take almost anything short of some kind of terrible crime thing or something like actually going on that hurts the world for that win. Because in 10 years, in 20 years, no one's going to be talking about this stupid scandal. What they're going to be talking about is the Astros winning the World Series. I mean, it's similar to like when USC got caught up in the spiffing scandal with the boosters and stuff, and Reggie Bush took like a house or something, and they stripped him of his Heisman. Guess what? Reggie Bush still won the Heisman that year. We know he was the best running back and the best player in college football. No one ever looks back on that year and goes, oh, well, the next guy won. Because I don't even know who the next guy was. We're not going to be talking about how the Astros lost in 20 years or whatever. Or the Astros, won and cheated in 20 years. It's still a win. It's still a World Series. It still counts. So for me, I want the memories. I want the win. If Phil's got to start stealing signs to do it, fuck it. Go for it. I don't care.
I guess that's the sad reality of sports and fan bases today is if you cheated like the Patriots did that year, people don't think about that game and whether they won it or whether they lost it. It's all about what happened at the end of the year. And if you came away with the championship, like you said, you can strip a Heisman, you can strip a World Series, you can strip a Stanley Cup, you can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, they say, well, who won it? You're now giving it to the team that we beat. So basically that year it's a null championship. Like you said, that's kind of the sad reality that we've come to in sports, that if they can find a way to cheat or they can find a way to get around it, they're gonna do it, and it's not gonna matter in the future, and we're not gonna look back on it and say, oh well, we erase that from the history of sports, because you can't erase that from the history of sports, and you can't get rid of the fact that the Houston Astros won the World Series that year, and you can't get rid of the fact that Reggie Bush won a Heisman that year. It is what it is. You can give it to second place, but giving it to second place kind of takes away from the fact that maybe they cheated for 1 or 2 games, but at the end of the day, they actually didn't cheat for 95%, 97% of that season. They actually were legitimately good and probably could have done it without cheating. But I digress. So quickly, before we hit the 1 hour mark and so that we can go watch some football, guarantee of the week. I will start for this. My guarantee of the week, with the healthy scratch of Sidney Jones in today's Philadelphia Eagles game, you have officially saw Sidney Jones, barring a setback with Cre'Von LeBlanc, you have seen Sidney Jones in an Eagles uniform for the last time. I believe he will be moved during the offseason for something, whether it be a pick, a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, whatever type of value we can get out of him. Howie is going to do the right thing. This was a failed experiment. I tweeted about it earlier. I said that there's a good chance he can go and succeed in another defense, but he will not succeed in a Jim Schwartz defense and with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think you have seen the last game, barring anything with Cre'Von LeBlanc and his injury. You have seen it, Sidney Jones in his last game as an Eagle. Thank God we didn't draft him as a 1st round pick.
All right, so I'm going to get back into basketball here, and this is something that I'm going to need you to hold me accountable for, Connor. So we've got a tough stretch of 10 games coming up here. We've got the likes of the Jazz. Luckily, it's at home this time. We've got the Raptors at home. Got the Nuggets at home. We're going up to TD Garden in Boston, and we are seeing Luka and the Dallas Mavs in the Wells Fargo Arena as well. I'm going to say over the next 10-game stretch, despite it being one of the tougher stretches of the Sixers season, they're going to go 7-3, and people are going to be singing our praises again in the next, I think it's 2-3 weeks. It'll take us to get there, but I think we're going 7-3, and the Sixers are on the right trajectory. Go Sixers.
Perfect. I made note of it. We will revisit that very soon to discuss it further. Anyways, well, we are off to watch some Eagles football, and I watch Eagles football in the red zone. I got like my laptop and my TV going at all times, so I'm pumped. Good luck to everyone in their final week of fantasy football. Good luck to those who are lucky enough to make it to their fantasy playoffs. And we will be back maybe in a week. Definitely 2 weeks, hopefully a week. We're going to try and make this a weekly thing right before every Sunday football. We're going to try and get out an episode. But Scott, once again, it was great. For those of you listening, please rate, review, tell us how we did. If we did good, if we did bad. We take criticism really well. We only cry behind the scenes. Don't worry, you don't have to hear it on our show. And if you follow at ANY Podcast for all of our shows. We got Whiskey Rambles. We got Backyard Beer and Football. We got the Kelly Green Hour. We got TJ's One of Us. We got I can't remember the Flyers one. God, that's terrible of me. But we got a Flyers show, yeah. Disciples of Ed. Yeah, we got Disciples of Ed. We got it all. So come on and check us out at ANY Podcast on Twitter. You can follow me at Connor10 on Twitter. Where can they find you, Scott?
Find me at SP Novick. It's Novick.
And so make sure you follow us, make sure you listen, make sure you rate, make sure you review, and we will be back very soon with another episode and some more great topics in Philly sports. Have a good one.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.